Hi and welcome to Philosophy with Phil, with me, Phil Cohen. In this video I want to talk about the concept of emunah, which in Hebrew means faith. It will feed off 2 or 3 other videos that I've done. There were some about human knowledge and about God and our relationship with God and so on. So you may want to refer back to those. I'll start with an apocryphal story. I'm not sure if it actually happened, but apparently the great philosopher Maimonides, Rambam, was once asked, I think by a Gentile, do Jews believe in God? And he replied, no, we don't. And he explained that were we to merely believe in God, then the religion wouldn't last as long as it already had back then, let alone as long as it has now. Belief in some abstract concept is not an ideology that lasts very long. What we have in Judaism is a practical lifestyle, a way of doing things. It reminds me very much of a scene in the musical, the book, the film Fiddler on the Roof, where Tevye asks his wife, do you love me? And she breaks out into a song saying, look, I wash your dishes, I cook your food, I do the laundry, I clean the house, I do all of these things for you, and you're asking me if I love you? And that's very much how Judaism is. Judaism is all about doing stuff, doing all of those chores that we talked about, that she talks about in the song. The concept of belief sort of sits underneath that and supports it all. But that's how we show our belief, not through thinking about it, but by actually doing it. By following God's will, learning about His Torah, learning about how the universe works, and seeing His underlying mechanisms for running it. That's how we show our belief in very practical terms. There's an often quoted phrase, verse, in the book of Habakkuk. He was one of the so-called lesser prophets. Don't like that word because any prophet that's listed in the Tanakh, in the writings, in the Jewish writings, must have been of some significance. But in the book of in the 2nd chapter of the book of Habakkuk, verse 4, it says, "But tzaddik be'emunah yiyeh." A tzaddik, a righteous person. We talked about tzedakah and tzaddik and what that means in a previous video when we talked about justice. A tzaddik be'emunah, through his emunah, through his faith, yeah, doesn't just live, but exists. Yihyeh means chai, means life. But yeah, but it also relates to the word yem, which means his very existence is emunah, is faith. That means everything that he does, through to getting dressed in the morning, right through to going to bed at night, every single action has underpinning it an accordance with Jewish law and a connection with God in some way. And yes, as I've said right at the beginning of the videos, faith isn't something that we, in Judaism, kind of stop and think about an awful lot. Certainly in Jewish writings we don't. Philosophy in general isn't something that sits comfortably with Judaism, because Judaism is about mitzvahs, is about commandments, is about doing things. Yeah. So if I were going to translate emunah, I wouldn't use the word faith. I think that doesn't really tell you much. I think for me it's more about an awareness of God in your life. And as I'm sure I've said before, there was a very great mystic that once was asked at a talk I went to, I was blessed to go to. How does one get to be, raise one's game, if you like, in emunah? How does one get to bring God into one's life in a better way, in a more coherent way? And he said it's little things, like every time you get in and out of the car, or every time you go in and out of your house, or going in and out of a room with a mezuzah. Just thinking for a moment the gratitude that you need to express to God for delivering you safely, for getting you through the journey safely, for arriving home safely or arriving at your destination safely. And just for taking literally no more than 5 to 10 seconds just to thank God for it all going to plan. Or at least not going as bad as it could have been. The other analogy that I'm pretty sure I've given in the past is to a roller coaster. Now, for those that know me, know that I have I have an incredible fear of heights. Okay, roller coasters do not do anything for me, I'm afraid. That fear is very deeply ingrained in my psyche. But you could say, well, roller coasters are very safe. What about if you were to read the safety manual for the roller coaster that you're about to go on? Would that help? Would the academic study help in your phobia, in overcoming your fear of the roller coaster? And of course, the answer is no. But it should, shouldn't it? If we think about it. If you were to read the various inspections that roller coaster has undertaken, and even to yourself do a physical exam of looking at every single rivet and every single girder that's on that roller coaster, to check that it's all as it should be, surely that should help you overcome your fear of heights and help me get on the roller coaster and have a carefree ride. Well, the answer is no. Because knowledge in and of itself isn't enough. Academic study isn't enough. I said in the previous video about meditation, where in academic institutions, in libraries and so on, you go on and it's peaceful and quiet, because that is academic study. Whereas when you go to a Beis HaMidrash or a yeshiva or a central Torah learning, you'll see that the people learning, as I'm afraid to say I do as well, are shouting and screaming at the top of their voices, trying to get to grips with what they're learning. That's because there's an emotional connection. Just like on the roller coaster, just reading the instruction manuals, the health and safety manuals, isn't going to be enough. That intellectual capability is a first step. There's no doubt about it. But one needs to take it one step further. And as I've said previously, you can't learn to swim just by reading a book. This week's Sedra is Yisro. And in the first of the Ten Commandments, God defines himself not as the creator of the universe, which is what he is, but as the force behind the Exodus, which is something that the children of Israel all experienced and something they could all relate to. That's because that was something they experienced and it was part of them. It was part of their, not part of their history, but part of who they were. They were slaves and now they were free. And they were free to follow God and follow his religion. So instead of relating to people in terms of their sort of academic, the academic study, I guess, if you like, which is the way people had related to God up until that point, until the point of Mount Sinai, until the point of Yetzias Mitzrayim and the Exodus. God as this mystical force behind the creation of the universe. Now they were able to incorporate God into their very lives. Again, this is that differentiation between the intellectual study and that emotional connection, which is what we feel through emunah, through faith. And that's the relationship Jews have with God. And that explains Maimonides, Rabbanon's answer to the question, do Jews believe in God? Do we believe that there are penguins in the South Pole? Well, yeah, there probably are. Okay. But can you, sitting here in your home where you're away from there, can you conclusively prove that there are? No, you can't. That's because your awareness of the penguins is just like the Abraham, Isaac and Jacob's awareness of God as a creator of the universe. And that is in itself is just like me reading up the health and safety manuals of the roller coaster. It's an academic, it's a very superficial level of certainty. What Judaism demands is that you don't just study Torah, but you live it, that you learn to live, and that it becomes a part of you, and it becomes a part of your way of life. I should end by just going over a difference between a similar concept of Emunah, and that is bitachon. Emunah is a state of understanding, as we've said. Bitachon is a state of trust. Bitachon is taking that level of Emunah a stage further. It is saying, okay, there is a God. I know he underpins everything that functions in the universe. Everything that exists is dependent on his existence. But we also say that God wants the best for us. And that is what bitachon is. Bitachon means that we appreciate that God didn't just create the world and left it running, but he is actively involved in its very existence, let alone its ongoing maintenance and running and everything. And that everything that happens to me is in God's hands, and that he wants the very best for us all. And that yes, even when bad things happen that seem to be bad on the surface, underlying them is God's love and affection for us and his close commitment to us. As I think was said by the Chief Rabbi, Rabbi Sachs, the Emeritus Chief Rabbi, Rabbi Sachs, Emunah isn't just about us believing in God. It's about us believing that God believes in us and in our potential to achieve tremendous, tremendous things. Shabbat Shalom, and thanks for watching.